Welcome to Reddit Audio Tales. Today's story is about love, timelines, and tough choices. When Avery was ready for a family, her military boyfriend wasn't. What happened next changed everything. I'm Emily, I'm 24, and I thought I had everything figured out until my boyfriend Jared decided to throw our entire future away over some stupid timeline. We both work on base here in Phoenix. I handle food service stuff, and he does his military thing. Been in for 4 years already. Everyone always warned me about dating military guys, but Jared seems different from all those other players who just want to hook up before deployment. This man was talking about real future stuff. Like getting out together, building something that actually mattered. We'd been living together in base housing for almost a year, and honestly, it was the most stable my life had ever been. Having someone to split everything with, someone who actually understood the whole military lifestyle without me having to explain every little thing. The other military girlfriends were cool enough, though half of them were just playing house until their guys got stationed somewhere else, but whatever. I kept my money separate though, because I'm not stupid. Just because we're living together doesn't mean I'm merging bank accounts or anything crazy like that. Jared never really pushed about the money stuff, which I appreciated. He just covered most of the bigger bills since he made more than me anyway, and I handle my car payment and personal stuff. It worked perfectly. We had this whole routine down where he'd get home from his shift, I'd already be back from the kitchen, and we'd just exist together without all the drama and fighting you see with other couples. No crazy arguments, no jealousy issues, just normal relationship stuff that actually felt sustainable. I started thinking this could actually be permanent, like maybe I'd found one of the good ones who wasn't going to disappear the second things got real. The benefit situation was absolutely incredible too. Jared's insurance covered everything, and if we ever had kids, they'd be set for life with medical and dental coverage that most civilian families could never afford. I'd bring it up sometimes, just casual comments about how lucky our future kids would be to have all the support, and Jared would nod along like he agreed. He never said no to having kids, just that he wanted to wait until we were both out of active duty, which I understood logically at first. But there's something about being surrounded by all these other military families that made me start thinking about timelines differently, These women my age were already having their second babies, getting all this community support, building these perfect little families while their husbands handled deployment stuff. It looked kind of amazing actually, the stability, the benefits, the built-in support system. I started wondering why exactly we were waiting when we already had literally everything we needed right in front of us. Jared was responsible. He was committed to us. We had housing and healthcare completely covered. What more did we really need to check off some imaginary list? The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like we were just wasting time for no real reason except Jared's weird hang-ups about timing. The baby conversation started feeling more urgent when I turned 24 last month. I know that probably sounds young to people who aren't military, but it's different when you're surrounded by women who are already on their second kid by this age. Plus, my body was ready. I'd always been super regular and healthy, and every month that passed started feeling like time I was just throwing away for no good reason. Jared would always say someday when I brought up kids, but someday felt way too vague when I needed actual plans. I needed to know we were building towards something real, not just playing house indefinitely while he figured out his feelings. The thing that really got to me was that Jared was already acting like a husband in literally every other way. He brought me home to meet his parents. We talked about getting married after his contract ended. He was planning his entire future around us being together long term. So, why was he being so weird and hesitant about the one thing that would actually make us a real family? I started bringing it up more directly, not nagging or anything, just honest conversations about where we saw ourselves in 2 years. 5 years down the line. And every single time, he'd give me this whole speech about wanting to be present for his kids, not wanting to be deployed constantly, waiting until we could both be civilians with normal schedules. Which sounds nice in theory, but we were already living together and building a life. Why did we need to wait literal years to make it official with a family when everything was already set up perfectly? What really started bothering me was watching other couples around us who were making it work. These guys would come back from deployment to wives and babies, and they seemed so genuinely happy and complete. Meanwhile, Jared and I were stuck in this weird relationship limbo where we were committed, but not really committed. The benefits were sitting right there. Our kids would have better health care than most civilians ever get, free education opportunities, a built-in community of support. We were already qualified for family housing and everything. The whole system was designed to support military families, and Jared was too scared or stubborn to take advantage of what we'd already earned. I started feeling like he was keeping me in permanent girlfriend mode when I was ready to move into wife and mother territory. Not that I needed some big fancy wedding to have a baby, but I needed to know he was as invested in our actual future as I was, not just comfortable with our current situation. The more I thought about it, the more it made perfect sense to just start trying now. We were both healthy, both employed with steady income, both committed to each other for the long haul. What exactly were we waiting for? Jared to wake up one day and magically feel ready. Some guys just need a push to realize they actually want something they've been scared to commit to. I finally decided to stop dancing around the subject and just be completely direct about what I wanted. No more hints, no more casual future conversations. That went nowhere. Jared needed to understand exactly where I stood and what my timeline actually looked like. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, and I realized I was genuinely ready to have a baby right now with or without his perfect timing fantasy. The benefits were already there. I was healthy and financially stable enough to handle it solo if I had to. If Jared wanted to be part of that journey, great. If he wanted to keep waiting for some imaginary perfect moment that might never come, that was his choice to make. But I wasn't putting my entire life on hold indefinitely while he worked through his issues. I brought it up one evening after dinner. Nothing dramatic or confrontational, just straight, honest conversation between two adults. I told him I wanted to start actively trying for a baby now, not in 2 years, or whenever he finally decided he felt ready enough. I explained that I was 24, my body was ready, we had incredible benefits and support systems, and I honestly didn't see the point in waiting anymore. I wasn't asking him to propose tomorrow or anything crazy, just to stop overthinking every little detail and start actually building the future we'd been talking about for months. Jared immediately got all tense and weird about it, which honestly told me everything I needed to know about where his head was really at. He started going through his usual speech about wanting to be present for his kids, not wanting to be deployed constantly, wanting to wait until we were both civilians with regular schedules. The exact same arguments he always made, like he had them memorized. So I told him the complete truth. I was ready to move forward with this now, and if he wasn't ready to be part of it, I'd figure it out on my own. That wasn't some kind of threat or manipulation, just a simple fact about my life. I'm not some helpless girl who needs a man's permission to have a baby. I have my own income, my own benefits, my own support network on base. I'd obviously prefer to do this with Jared since I love him, but I wasn't going to sit around waiting forever for him to get over whatever fears were holding him back. I think that's when Jared finally realized I was being completely serious about this, not just talking about hypothetical future babies anymore. I was talking about right now, about actively trying to get pregnant in the next few months, whether he decided to participate or not. And honestly, his reaction showed me exactly what kind of partner he really was deep down. Instead of being excited that I was ready to take this major step with him, he got defensive and started lecturing me, started acting like I was being irrational for wanting to start a family when we had everything we needed already in place. Jared completely lost his mind after I explained that I was having a baby with or without his involvement. He started yelling about how I was being crazy and manipulative, how I was trying to trap him into something he wasn't ready for, which was absolutely ridiculous considering I literally just offered to do the whole thing without him if he wasn't interested. How exactly is that trapping someone? If anything, I was giving him a complete out from any responsibility. But no, apparently me making independent decisions about my own life and body was somehow an attack on him personally. He went on this whole dramatic rant about how having a baby right now would ruin our entire future, how he'd be stuck and miserable, how he'd never be able to be the kind of father he wanted to be while still active duty. And I just sat there thinking, this is exactly why I need to stop waiting for his permission and just make this decision myself. Jared was so wrapped up in his fears and his need for everything to be perfect that he couldn't see the amazing opportunity right in front of us. We had everything any couple could want: benefits, housing, stable income, a solid relationship foundation. But he was so terrified of not being the perfect dad that he was willing to waste years of our lives waiting for some fantasy situation that probably didn't even exist. I tried to stay calm and reasonable, explaining that I wasn't trying to manipulate him or force him into anything. I was just being honest about what I wanted and what I was planning to do. But Jared kept acting like my biological timeline and life goals were somehow a personal attack on him. Like everything had to revolve around his comfort level and his fears. I finally got fed up with his victim act and told him the real truth. I was going to start trying to get pregnant, period. And if he didn't want to be part of that process, he was free to leave. Not because I was kicking him out, but because I wasn't going to pretend I didn't want what I wanted just to protect his feelings. That's when Jared showed me exactly who he really was underneath all his sweet boyfriend act. He said if I was going to be that way about it, maybe I should just find someone else to have a baby with. Like that was supposed to hurt me or make me back down or something. But honestly, it just confirmed everything I was already starting to figure out about him. Jared was more interested in controlling my decisions and timeline than actually building a real future together. So I looked him straight in the eye and said, maybe I will. Because seriously, why shouldn't I? If Jared wasn't ready to step up and be the partner I needed him to be, why should I waste more time waiting for him to grow up and figure out what he actually wanted? Jared didn't say another word to me for the rest of that night. Just sat there looking all shocked and hurt, like I'd said something completely unreasonable, instead of just being honest about my life plans. But I meant every single word. And I went to bed that night feeling clearer about everything than I had in months. I'd finally stopped pretending and told him exactly what I wanted. And if Jared couldn't handle a woman who knew her own mind, then he definitely wasn't the right person to start a family with. Anyway, I woke up the next morning and Jared was already gone. His car wasn't in the driveway. And when I checked our closet, a bunch of his clothes and personal stuff had disappeared. No note, no text message, nothing. Just vanished like some kind of child who couldn't handle having one difficult conversation. And honestly, my first reaction wasn't sadness or regret about losing him. It was pure relief. Because Jared had finally shown me his true character. He was someone who would literally run away the moment things got real or challenging. I'd actually dodged a huge bullet by finding this out now, instead of wasting more years waiting for him to mature. I went to work that day acting completely normal, like nothing major had even happened. A couple of the other girls asked where Jared was when they didn't see his car. And I just said we were taking some space to figure out our different priorities. Which was totally true if you think about it. Jared was figuring out whether he actually wanted to be part of my life. And I was figuring out how to move forward without someone who clearly wasn't ready for adult responsibilities. The housing situation was slightly awkward since we were both on the lease agreement. But I figured we'd work out those practical details eventually when Jared decided to act like a grown-up again. He could come collect the rest of his belongings whenever he was ready to have a mature conversation about our living arrangements. I spent the next few days really thinking hard about what I wanted my life to look like. And the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I'd been absolutely right all along. I was ready to start a family. I had everything necessary to make it work successfully. And I definitely didn't need Jared's permission or approval to make decisions about my own future. If he wanted to be part of that future, he knew where to find me. If not, I was perfectly capable of figuring it out independently. I even started looking into resources for single parents on base, just to see what kind of support was available. Turns out there's actually tons of assistance for military families, including single-parent situations. The benefits were just as good. The housing options were still there. And there were plenty of other single moms around who could offer practical advice and emotional support. Jared finally came back 3 days later to collect more of his stuff. And he looked absolutely terrible. Like he hadn't been sleeping or eating properly since he left. Part of me felt a little bad seeing him like that. But mostly I just felt annoyed that he was being so overly dramatic about everything. I tried to have a rational adult conversation with him to see if he was ready to discuss our future seriously now that he'd had time to think. But he just kept saying he needed more time to process everything. That I'd completely blindsided him with my timeline, that he wasn't ready to make such a huge life decision so quickly. Which was exactly what I'd expected him to say. Honestly, Jared was never going to feel ready because he was too scared to take any real risks or commit to anything permanent. He wanted to keep playing house indefinitely, enjoying all the benefits of a serious relationship without ever actually stepping up to make it official or take it to the next level. I told him that was perfectly fine, but I wasn't going to sit around waiting while he spent months or years trying to decide what he wanted. I had my own life to live and my own decisions to make about my future. If Jared wanted to be part of that life, he needed to make up his mind soon. Otherwise, I was moving forward with my plans regardless of his involvement. He packed up the rest of his clothes and personal items without saying much else, and I could tell he was hoping I'd change my mind or beg him to stay. But I wasn't about to do that. Jared had made his choice when he decided his comfort zone was more important than our relationship. He could live with the consequences of running away instead of working through our differences like adults. I wasn't going to chase after someone who clearly didn't value what we'd built together enough to fight for it. Within a week, Jared had moved out completely and was apparently staying in the barracks like some teenager who couldn't handle adult responsibilities. I heard through mutual friends that he was pretty miserable, that he regretted leaving, that he missed what we'd had together. But it was way too late for regrets at that point. He'd made his decision when he chose to abandon our relationship rather than work through one disagreement about timing. I'd given him every possible opportunity to step up and be the partner I needed, and he'd chosen to run away instead of having difficult conversations. I started putting myself out there more after that, going to base social events and meeting new people who were actually interested in building something real. There were plenty of single guys around who were ready for commitment and starting families, not like Jared who wanted to wait forever for some perfect moment that would never actually come. And honestly, I was happier and more confident without Jared's constant negativity and fear holding me back from what I really wanted. The really pathetic part is that Jared kept trying to get our mutual friends to talk to me to see if I'd be willing to work things out with him. But work out what exactly? He still wasn't ready for kids, still wanted to wait until after he got out of the military, still wanted to keep our relationship in this permanent holding pattern without any real commitment or progress. Nothing had actually changed except that now I could see his true character clearly. He was someone who would run away from problems instead of solving them, someone who would abandon his partner the moment things got challenging. I wasn't going to go backwards just because Jared was feeling lonely and regretful about his choices now. I'd moved on emotionally, and I was genuinely happier without his constant anxiety and need to control every detail of our timeline. I started seeing someone new after about 2 months, a contractor who worked on base, older than Jared and way more mature, actually ready for the things I wanted in life. When Jared found out about my new relationship, he completely lost his mind and showed his true colors, started calling me constantly, sending long text messages, even showing up at my workplace trying to force conversations, acting like I'd somehow betrayed him by moving on with my life after he'd abandoned our relationship, like I was supposed to wait around indefinitely while he figured out whether he wanted to be with me or not. It was honestly pathetic and kind of scary how possessive he got once he realized I wasn't sitting around crying over him. I actually had to contact base security to make him stop harassing me at work, which was embarrassing but necessary. That's when I realized just how much I dodged a bullet with Jared. The guy I thought was stable and mature was actually just a scared, controlling person who couldn't handle being with a woman who knew what she wanted. He'd rather try to manipulate and pressure me than actually step up and be the partner I deserved. I was so much better off without him, and everyone around us could see it clearly. Jared ended up getting transferred to another base within 6 months because he couldn't handle seeing me happy and successful without him. Last I heard through the gossip network, he was still single and still making excuses for why he wasn't ready for anything serious with anyone. Meanwhile, I'm building exactly the life I always wanted, not sitting around waiting for someone else to give me permission to be happy and fulfilled. Sometimes you just have to cut loose the dead weight and focus on people who actually value what you bring to their lives. What would you do if your partner kept stalling your future? Avery chose herself and found freedom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more real Reddit-style drama every day.